King Charles was mid-sentence when Princess Anne walked up and handed him a sealed note. He froze. The crowd went silent. That note, allegedly written by Princess Diana and hidden for over 25 years. What did it say, and why did Anne choose now? This changes everything. The unexpected setting. It was supposed to be just another royal engagement. King Charles III standing at the grand podium inside Buckingham Palace, delivering what everyone thought would be a carefully scripted speech, the kind of address that touched on charitable work, honored dignitaries, and reminded the public of royal tradition. But this time something cracked through that tradition, and it came from the one person no one expected, Princess Anne. She stood quietly nearby, her presence calm as always, but those who watched closely could tell something was different. There was a tension in her expression, not anger, not fear, but something else, something like knowing. Just as Charles began his next line mid-sentence, clear and strong, and moved forward, breaking all protocol, she didn't speak. She didn't interrupt. Instead, she reached into her coat, pulled out a sealed envelope, and placed directly into her brother's hand. The air changed instantly. Even the royal aides used to every sort of crisis looked confused. This wasn't part of the plan. The audience fell silent. Some cameras caught the moment, some didn't. But what everyone saw, what no one could forget, was that the king froze. He looked down at the envelope as if it were something from another lifetime. And maybe it was because that note, hidden for decades, wasn't official. It wasn't ceremonial. It was personal. And it had Princess Diana's name written on the back. Why? No one staffer reportedly whispered. Why, in front of everyone, what had been a routine speech had suddenly turned into a moment of royal history and scripted wrong. And on the edge of unraveling, this unexpected handoff would become the most talked about thing in the palace for weeks. But it was just the beginning. Because the note would break more than just the speech. It would open wounds that had been hidden since Diana's death in 1997. And what happened next would shake the core of the crown. The freeze that followed. The moment the envelope touched his hand, King Charles stopped talking. The words were there, lined up neatly on the teleprompter. But he couldn't read them. He couldn't even look up. His eyes were locked on the handwriting. It was unmistakable. It was hers, Diana's. And for a brief second the king wasn't a monarch anymore. He was just a man. A man caught in the past. The audience saw it, so did the cameras. He blinked, swallowed, and then just froze. His posture, once regal, stiffened like stone. One of his hands clutched the speech papers, the other gripped the note. A faint shake in his fingers gave away what the rest of his face tried to hide. Then silence, a kind of stillness that rarely happens at a royal event. People started shifting in their seats. Aides moved forward, unsure whether to help or wait. The silence dragged on for nearly 25 seconds, long enough to feel like forever. Even Princess Anne, usually unreadable, looked toward her brother with something close to concern, but she didn't step in. She had done what she came to do. Some whispered that they heard him murmur something under his breath. Why now? Others claimed he looked like he was about to walk off the stage, but he didn't. He simply stood there, trapped in that one moment, while the note rested in his palm like a message from another world. And maybe it was because the presence of Diana, even decades after her passing, still has the power to stop a king mid-speech, and not just any king. The very man she once called her husband, the man whose life moved forward, but not always honestly. By the time Charles finally found his voice again, something had changed. He didn't pick up where he left off. He skipped a paragraph, stuttered once, then looked out into the crowd with eyes that had seen too much memory into little time. The formal rhythm of the event was broken. There would be no saving it now. And the note, still unopened, still burning in his hand, around like a secret that couldn't stay silent much longer. Because everyone knew, even if they didn't say it, that the truth Diana carried was never buried. It was just waiting to be passed, and had chosen today to do it. And so the world turned its attention from the king's words to the letter that brought the entire monarchy to a standstill. Next, where did this hidden note come from, and why now, after nearly 3 decades, was it suddenly in Charles's hands? The hidden note's origins. For years no one even knew such a note existed. Not the press, not the public, not even some inside the royal family. But deep within Princess Diana's private belongings, carefully stored after her death in August 1997, was a small envelope that had never been opened and never meant to be seen by the world. The handwriting on it, unmistakably hers. A personal script that Charles would have recognized instantly. It was delicate, written in blue ink and addressed simply, "For Charles." Rumors swirled immediately. Some said it had been tucked inside a jewelry box belonging to Diana, and others believed it had been placed inside a diary sealed and stored during the cleanup of Kensington Palace after her passing. There were even whispers that Princess Anne discovered it recently while overseeing the late Queen Elizabeth II's private collection and recognized exactly what she was holding. But why her YN? Because if there's one person in the royal family known for quiet loyalty and guarded action, it's the Princess Royal. She's never been one for headlines, but she understands history and the power of timing. And this moment, it was timed perfectly. She chose to deliver the letter not in private, but at a public event in front of cameras, the court and the country. That decision wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, symbolic, explosive. Some insiders believe Anne had been holding on to the note for weeks, unsure when or if to give it to her brother. Others say she may have only discovered it days before the event during a private archive review tied to upcoming Diana memorial discussions set for the 30th anniversary in 2027. Either way, what's clear is this: the note had been buried both literally and emotionally for over 25 years, and its emergence now couldn't have been more dramatic. But that wasn't the real shock. The real question wasn't where the note came from, but what it said inside. Because as King Charles stood frozen staring at it, you could almost feel the weight of the past crash into his chest. And in that moment, the past wasn't just knocking, it was demanding to be heard. Next we go inside that moment, the king's reaction, as he comes face to face with a message from the woman whose shadow still hangs over the crown. The emotional impact on the king. There are few times in a king's life when the mask slips, but this was one of them. As Charles clutched the unopened letter from Princess Diana, something cracked, not physically, not dramatically, but emotionally and deeply. The carefully rehearsed man who has spent decades balancing public duty with private regret suddenly looked completely lost. He didn't open the note in front of the cameras, he couldn't, not yet. But everyone in the room could see it, of the storm rising behind his eyes, the shift in his breathing, the slight tremor in his hands. He wasn't reading from a speech anymore, trying not to fall apart. She waited until now, and why he was overheard whispering not into a microphone but to himself, because the truth is this wasn't just any letter. It wasn't political. It wasn't formal. It was personal. And it had been written by the woman who had once shaken the entire royal family to its core, and who had shared a marriage with Charles that ended in scandal, heartbreak, and a tragic loss the world still hasn't recovered from. The note, sources believe, may have contained Diana's final thoughts or truth, or words never meant for cameras, only for him. Didn't hold forgiveness. Did carry blame, or was it something more haunting, something that might make Charles question every decision that followed her death? Royal aides described him as visibly shaken. One palace insider said they hadn't seen the king look so emotionally naked in over 30 years. Even Queen Camilla, seated offstage, was seen shifting uncomfortably as the tension thickened. Because what Charles was holding in his hand wasn't just paper. It was the past, unfiltered and undeniable. For a man who has worked tirelessly to reshape his image since 1997, this single letter might undo everything. Not because of scandal, but because of truth. And what Diana's truth means for the future of the monarchy is the question now echoing across every royal hallway. As the king composed himself and stepped away from the podium, one thing was clear: he would never be the same. But what about the woman who gave him the letter? Why now? Why like this? Next we look at Princess Anne's role and the possible reason she chose to hand over Diana's truth in full view of the world. Princess Anne's role and motivation. There's always been something about Princess Anne that sets her apart from the rest of the royal family. She's not loud, she's not flashing, but she's sharper than most realize. And in this moment, standing beside her brother with Diana's letter in her hand, she wasn't just a sister, she was a messenger, a trigger, a symbol of unfinished business. Many wondered why now, why deliver something so private, so explosive in such a public setting? Behind palace walls there's speculation. Some believe Anne had been holding on to the letter for months, that she discovered it while reviewing Queen Elizabeth II's personally state archives documents recently opened following the late monarch's passing in September 2022, and tucked among them was this: a sealed envelope With Diana's handwriting, no one had touched it in over 25 years and could have quietly handed it to Charles in private. She could have mailed it, scheduled a private lunch. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped forward mid-speech in front of an audience, cameras and staff. She made sure the world saw it happen. Was it revenge? Was it duty? Insiders say it was neither. She did it for history one royal age shared. She believed the letter's truth didn't belong in shadows, princess, and has always walked the fine line between royal tradition and quiet rebellion. This move, it felt like both. She didn't need to speak. She let the moment speak for her. By staying silent, calm, and dignified, she created one of the loudest moments in royal memory. Even Charles, frozen with the letter in his hand, looked at her not with anger, but with understanding. Like he'd expected this day would come, but not like this. Whatever was in that letter, and didn't write it, but she carried its weight, and by placing it in her brother's hands, she shifted the entire emotional landscape of the monarchy. But what about the content? Because if the delivery was this powerful, the message itself had to be something far greater. What exactly did Diana write? Next, we speculate on the note's hidden message and why its contents could reshape everything we thought we knew. The hidden message's content speculative. The envelope remains sealed in public for now, but the speculation is already boiling over. What could Princess Diana have written to Charles, a man she once loved, later divorced, and never truly forgave in the public eye? What kind of message waits in a letter kept secret for over 2 decades? Some believe it's a farewell, a soft, sorrowful goodbye written during her final days, perhaps even just weeks before her tragic death in Paris, August 1997. A final attempt to close the chapter between them. Others suspect it's a confession, maybe something she never dared speak aloud, a truth about their marriage, about what she endured behind palace walls, or even a revelation meant for the man she believed Charles could have been. But the most powerful theory, that it's a warning not of scandal but of legacy. Sources close to Diana's former butler who helped manage her private papers say she often worried about how history would remember her and how the monarchy might reshape the narrative after she was gone. If anything ever happened to me, let the truth speak later, not now, she once reportedly told a close friend. Could this letter be that truth? Imagine words like "you wore the crown, but not the burden that belonged to me," or "I forgive you, but I will never forget what you cost me." If even a fraction of those sentiments exist inside the letter, they would reshape everything, not just for King Charles, but for the entire royal institution. Because Diana's voice has always carried more power after her death than it ever did while she was alive. And now, thanks to a bold move, that voice may finally be heard in full. The question now, will Charles open the letter publicly or bury it again? Because whatever is inside the monarchy may never be the same once it's revealed. The media storm begins. Cameras were rolling, mics were on, and headlines were already writing themselves. The public reaction and media storm. The moment King Charles froze with speech didn't stay inside palace walls for long. By the time the event ended, the footage was already circulating. Royal watchers noticed the shift, the fall to the envelope, and within hours headlines asked the world exploded. King Charles stunned by secret, Diana, note one UK paper blasted. Frozen at the podium, a moment that shook the monarchy. Another ran, and social media, it caught fire. Millions viewed the clip within 36 hours. Slowed down, zoomed in, voice analyzed. People wanted to know what stopped the king cold. It wasn't just curiosity. It was personal. For many, Princess Diana was more than a royal. She was a symbol of truth, vulnerability, and humanity. And now, over 25 years after her death, the idea that a message from her could reach Charles publicly, emotionally, was explosive. It reopened wounds. It reignited the world's fascination with her story. It's like she spoke from the grave, and he heard her finally, one commentator said on live TV. Royal experts scrambled to weigh in. Some insisted the letter was purely personal. Others hinted a deeper meaning, something political, maybe even a directive Diana left behind. Either way, the palace said nothing, not a word, just silence. That silence only made things worse. Talk shows began speculating. TikTokers dissected body language. Threads on royal forums surged into the hundreds of thousands of views, and through it all, sympathy poured toward Diana. People remembered her interviews, her pain, her isolation. They remembered how she said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, and they wondered what would she say no if she could. This wasn't just a royal moment, it became a cultural wave, a generational reckoning. After from a woman the world lost too soon, finally arriving in the hands of the man who perhaps understood its meaning a little too late. And just like that, the public wasn't looking at the crown anymore. They were staring straight at what the crown had tried to forget. What happens when that truth collides with tradition? That leads directly to the next tremor. The royal family's internal fracture now exposed in front of the world. The royal family dynamics exposed. For decades, the British royal family has prided itself on structure, roles, boundaries, a carefully polished image of unity. But one letter sealed by Princess Diana, delivered by Princess Anne, and frozen in the hand of King Charles cracked that entire illusion wide open. Because this wasn't just a sentimental moment, this was an exposure of fracture. And everyone inside the family knew it. Behind closed doors, tensions were said to be rising fast. Prince William was reportedly one of the first to hear what happened, and he was not calm about it. Aides close to him say he demanded answers. If that letter contained anything related to his mother's final thoughts, he wanted to see it. He wanted transparency, and he wanted it now. But the king, still stunned by the moment, didn't immediately respond. That silence only pushed more distance between father and son. In came Camilla. She's always been a point of controversy when it comes to Diana, his legacy, and now insiders suggest she was deeply unsettled by Anne's actions. One source claimed Camilla viewed it as a public ambush disguised as ceremony, but she stood by her decision, calm, unbothered, like she had done what needed to be done. This wasn't about politics or power, it was about truth, and unnamed palace officials shared, and Princess Anne saw no reason to keep it buried. The family's usual chain of command completely ignored, and didn't go through Charles' private secretary. She didn't inform Camilla, she didn't brief William, she acted alone. And that move spoke volumes. It raised a new question: were there alliances inside the royal family that the public never saw? And who had once maintained quiet support for Diana? Could she have been protecting his legacy all these years? Could her choice to unseal the letter now mean she believed the public deserved to see the truth before it was sanitized? Because one thing is certain, this wasn't a spontaneous gesture, it was planned, measured, symbol. Like, and now the entire royal family is dealing with the aftermath, not just have a message from the past, but of what happens when one of their own refuses to keep history in the shadows. Alone, what this moment means for history itself, and how it might reshape Diana's legacy forever. The historical significance. Moments like this don't just stir gossip, they reshape royal history. When Princess Diana died in August 1997, the monarchy faced one of its darkest chapters. Public trust collapsed. Mourning turned into outrage. For the first time, the crown felt vulnerable. But over the decades that followed, the royal family rebuilt slowly, carefully, piece by piece, until now. This letter, hidden for over 25 years, sealed with Diana's handwriting and handed publicly to King Charles III, didn't just reopen old wounds, it reopened the narrative. Because for decades the official version of Diana's life has been carefully managed. Documentaries, memoirs, royal statements, they all painted part of the picture. But the existence of a personal private message from Diana herself threatens to disrupt that balance. It's not just about what she wrote, it's about what we never got to hear. One royal historian said, and they're right, if the note contains new reflections, regrets, or revelations, it challenges the timeline. It forces the public and the monarchy to reconsider the last chapter of her life, not through tabloids or tell-alls, but through her own words. Even more powerful, the way it was revealed, not through press leaks or anonymous sources, not through a TV interview, but through Princess Anne in broad daylight, beside the reigning king. It was a quiet rebellion, a reminder that some truths aren't meant to stay buried, no matter how many crowns are polished above them. In that moment, the monarchy wasn't just dealing with emotion, it was dealing with reputation, record, and remembrance. This wasn't just about Charles freezing at a podium, it was about the Queen of Hearts finally having the last word, decades after being silenced. And as that letter continues to sit unopened or unread publicly, one thing is clear. This moment won't be forgotten, not by the family, not by the press, and certainly not by the people who still whisper Diana's name like royalty. And now we're left with the only thing more powerful than a revealed secret, one that's still sealed. What happens next? And the cliffhanger. The event may be over, but the story is just beginning. Will King Charles open the letter privately or release its contents to the public? Will Princess Anne speak out or stay silent as she always